People hide their feelings for you in predictable ways, and once you know what to look for, you'll never miss the signs again. When someone secretly loves you, they're caught between wanting you to know and protecting themselves from rejection. That contradiction shows up everywhere if you're paying attention. The 7 signs we're covering today come from psychology, relationship research, and real human behavior. They're not foolproof on their own, but when you see several of them together, you're looking at someone who likely has deeper feelings than they're admitting. The first sign is selective attention. This person remembers small details about your life that most people forget. You mentioned once, in passing, that you liked a specific coffee shop, or that your sister was starting a new job. Weeks later, they ask you how your sister's first week went. They remember your birthday without checking Facebook. They know your favorite song even though you only played it once in their car. This isn't random. The brain prioritizes information about people we care about. When someone is secretly in love with you, your details get filed in their long-term memory automatically. The second sign is their behavior around you changes depending on who's watching. When you're alone, they're relaxed, present, and genuinely engaged. They make eye contact. They lean in when they talk to you. They laugh at your jokes. But the moment other people arrive, especially people they're trying to impress, they become distant. They pull back. They might even seem cold. This happens because they're afraid of revealing their true feelings. They don't want others to notice how they look at you or how they respond to you. The shift is usually subtle, but it's there. The third sign is inconsistent communication patterns. They text you constantly one week, then go quiet the next. They might disappear for days without explanation, then suddenly send you something they think you'll find funny or interesting. This isn't flakiness. This is someone fighting with themselves. They want to reach out but don't want to seem too interested. They pull away when they feel themselves getting too close. The pattern looks like emotional hot and cold, and it usually reflects internal conflict about their feelings. The fourth sign is they go out of their way to help you, even when it's inconvenient. They volunteer for tasks that involve you. They remember to ask about your problems and follow up on them later. They show up when you need something, sometimes before you even ask. They don't broadcast this kindness or expect anything in return. They just do it quietly. People who secretly love you often express it through actions, because actions feel safer than words. The fifth sign is they get noticeably uncomfortable around your romantic interests. If you mention someone you're dating or interested in, they get quiet. Their body language shifts. They might make a joke that lands a little too sharp. They lose interest in the conversation. Some people become visibly tense. Others suddenly find an excuse to leave. This reaction isn't about being a bad friend. It's about jealousy and hurt. They can't hide the pain of watching you care about someone else. The sixth sign is they maintain a specific kind of emotional intimacy with you. They share vulnerable things with you that they don't share with others. They trust you with their insecurities, their fears, their embarrassing moments. They create inside jokes that feel like they belong only to the two of you. They position themselves as your confidant. This intimacy is a way of getting close to you emotionally when they can't do it romantically. The seventh and final sign is they struggle with boundaries. They want to be around you constantly. They get upset when you make plans without them. They might monitor your social media or ask questions about your whereabouts. They become possessive without having any right to be. This boundary crossing comes from fear. Fear of losing you, fear of missing something, fear that someone else will fill the space they want to occupy. These 7 signs paint a picture of someone caught between love and fear. Now let's dig deeper into each one. The first sign is that they remember small details about you that most people forget. They'll bring up something you mentioned once in passing 3 weeks ago. A conversation about your childhood dog, A throwaway comment about your coffee order. They file these things away because you matter to them in a way that demands attention. Their brain is literally prioritizing you. When someone loves you but hides it, they become a collector of your details. They're building a mental map of who you are, and that map gets updated constantly. This isn't random. This is someone paying the kind of attention that only comes from genuine care. The second sign is inconsistent communication patterns. They'll disappear for days, then suddenly text you constantly. They'll go quiet when they're around their friends, then reach out when they're alone. This inconsistency happens because they're fighting with themselves. Part of them wants to be close to you. Another part panics and pulls back, terrified that being too available will expose how much they care. They're managing their own feelings by managing the distance between you. One day they're all in. The next day they're protecting themselves. It's exhausting for them and confusing for you. The third sign is that they show up for you in practical ways. They don't just say they care, they demonstrate it through action. They remember when you have a difficult day and check in. They offer to help with something you mentioned struggling with. They show up when you need them, sometimes before you even ask. But here's the thing. They downplay it afterward. They act like it was no big deal. They deflect gratitude. They do this because accepting your appreciation feels too real, too close to admitting what's actually happening. If they let you thank them properly, if they let that moment be what it is, the wall between hiding and revealing comes down. So they keep it light. The fourth sign is that they get visibly uncomfortable when you mention dating other people. Their body language shifts. They might laugh it off too quickly. They might ask too many questions. They might make a joke that lands a little too hard. This is the mask slipping. When someone is hiding their feelings, they usually maintain composure. But the idea of you with someone else is the one thing that cracks it. It's too much. The jealousy leaks through because the stakes are suddenly real. They're not just hiding a feeling anymore. They're watching it become irrelevant. These signs start to form a pattern. You're seeing someone who is deeply invested, but deeply afraid. They're trying to have you in their life, without admitting why you matter so much. The contradiction between how they act and how they present themselves becomes the real tell. And as we move forward, we're going to look at the signs that get even harder to hide. So what does that contradiction actually look like in practice? It shows up in the small moments that don't add up. Someone who secretly loves you will go out of their way for you in ways they wouldn't for other people. They'll remember details you mentioned once in passing. They'll show up when you need them, sometimes before you even ask. But the second you acknowledge this pattern, they pull back. They make it seem casual. They say anyone would do the same thing. They're rewriting their own behavior in real time to make it mean less than it does. This is where their words and actions create real friction. They might say they're not that close to you, but their calendar tells a different story. They might claim they're too busy for most people, yet they always have time for you. They might insist they're not the type to get emotionally attached, but their consistency with you says otherwise. The mask they're wearing doesn't fit the life they're actually living. Pay attention to how they treat you versus how they talk about you. Someone hiding their feelings will often downplay your relationship when other people are around. They might be distant in group settings, but completely different when it's just the two of you. This isn't always about being private or reserved. It's about controlling the narrative. They don't want others drawing conclusions. They don't want you drawing conclusions. Because the moment it becomes real in the world, it becomes harder to deny to themselves. You'll also notice they get defensive about their own behavior. If you point out that they're always there for you, they might get irritated or dismissive. They might even turn it around and make you feel like you're reading too much into things. This defensiveness is protective. They're not angry at you. They're uncomfortable with being seen. Being seen means being vulnerable, and vulnerability means admitting something they're not ready to admit. Another layer is how they respond to you, talking about other people. Someone who secretly loves you will have a reaction to you mentioning romantic interests or close friendships. It might be subtle, a shift in their tone, a longer pause. They might ask more questions than they normally would. They might seem less interested in the conversation, almost like they're checking out emotionally. This isn't jealousy in the obvious sense. It's discomfort. It's the sound of their careful distance being threatened. The key to understanding this contradiction is recognizing that it comes from conflict. They want to be close to you, and they want to protect themselves from the risk that comes with closeness. So they do both at the same time. They show up consistently, but stay emotionally guarded. They remember everything but act like nothing matters. They prioritize you but minimize what that means. This pattern of contradictions is actually one of the most reliable indicators that someone's feelings run deeper than they're willing to express. Because consistency in behavior is easy to fake. But contradictions, those come from internal conflict. And internal conflict only exists when something matters enough to be worth hiding. That's where the fourth sign comes in. They remember the small things you mention in passing. You'll casually say your favorite coffee order once, maybe weeks ago, and suddenly they're showing up with it. Or you mention an obscure band you like, and they send you a song from that band out of nowhere. This isn't random. This is someone paying attention at a level that goes beyond casual friendship. When you care about someone romantically, you unconsciously catalogue details about them. You file away preferences and interests, because your brain is working overtime trying to understand them, trying to know them better than anyone else does. The person hiding their feelings does this compulsively. They're gathering intelligence without realizing how obvious it makes them. The fifth sign is the selective vulnerability. They'll share something deeply personal with you that they don't tell other people. Maybe it's an insecurity, a fear, a failure they're not proud of, but they trust you with it. Then they pull back. They don't follow up. They seem almost embarrassed they said it. What's happening here is they're testing the waters. They're seeing if you're someone safe to be close to, someone worth the risk. But the moment they realize how exposed they've made themselves, they retreat. It's like they're trying to build intimacy while simultaneously protecting themselves from it. The contradiction is the giveaway. The sixth sign is harder to spot because it's about what they don't do. They don't set boundaries with you the way they do with other people. If someone secretly loves you, they're often willing to inconvenience themselves for you in ways they wouldn't for friends. They'll drop plans. They'll drive across town. They'll spend time doing things they normally wouldn't enjoy because you're involved. But here's the thing. They rarely advertise this. They don't want you to feel indebted. They don't want you to notice the pattern, because noticing the pattern means acknowledging what it means. So they act like it's no big deal, like anyone would do it, when really they're making choices that reveal their priority list. The seventh and final sign is the most painful one to witness. They sabotage potential connections between you and other people they perceive as threats. Not obviously. Not in a way you can call them out on. But they'll ask questions about your date that seem innocent, but are really designed to find flaws. They'll suddenly remember something important you need to do, right when you're about to leave with someone else. They'll become cold or distant when you mention someone new in your life. They're protecting an investment they can't admit they've made. And the cruelty of it is they don't even realize they're doing it. They think they're just being realistic about whether this other person is good enough for you. But underneath that rationalization is the truth. They don't want you with anyone else because they want you with them. They just can't say it. So you start noticing the pattern. They'll do this thing where they ask you detailed questions about your relationships. Not in a nosy way. In a way that feels like they're genuinely invested in understanding what's going wrong. They remember things you mentioned once in passing months ago. They bring those details back up in conversations. They ask follow-up questions that show they've been thinking about your situation. This is different from a regular friend checking in. This is someone who's mentally replaying your conversations. Someone who's building a file on your romantic life because it matters to them on a level they won't admit. And here's where it gets interesting. If you tell them you're thinking about getting back together with an ex or pursuing someone new, watch what happens. They don't just say they're worried about you. They get specific. They remind you of the exact ways that person hurt you. They bring up conversations you forgot you had. They paint a detailed picture of why this won't work. A friend worries. Someone who secretly loves you becomes a prosecutor. They build a case, and the case is always designed to keep you single and available. Sometimes they'll even do this thing where they ask you hypothetical questions about your future. What would you want in an ideal relationship? What qualities matter most to you? They're not asking because they're bored. They're asking because they're checking whether they fit the criteria. They're running a compatibility test without ever saying that's what they're doing. And if you accidentally describe someone and that description sounds a lot like them, they'll go quiet. They might change the subject, or they'll minimize it. They'll say something like, well, nobody's perfect. As if they're not secretly hoping you're describing them. The cruelty of it is they don't even realize they're doing it. They think they're just being realistic about whether this other person is good enough for you. But underneath that rationalization is the truth. They don't want you with anyone else because they want you with them. They just can't say it. This behavior intensifies when they see you getting close to someone. Suddenly they're more available. They text more. They find reasons to see you. They remind you of all the good times you've had together. It's like they're trying to re-establish their importance in your life before someone else takes that spot. The detail that matters here is consistency. A friend who's worried about your choices will express that concern and then let you make your own decisions. Someone who secretly loves you keeps bringing it up. They keep steering the conversation back to why you shouldn't be with this person. They keep reminding you of your connection to them. This is sign number 5. They interrogate your romantic prospects and they protect their position in your life by making sure no one else looks good enough to take it. So now we get to sign number 6, and this one's subtle, but it cuts deep. They remember things you forgot you told them. Not just the big moments, but the small details. You mentioned a random conversation from months ago, and they bring it up perfectly. They know how you take your coffee. They know your sister's name. They know the story behind that scar on your knee. This matters because memory is intimate. When someone secretly loves you, they're not just listening to pass the time. They're collecting you. They're building a complete picture because they care about every part of who you are. A casual acquaintance forgets. A friend remembers the important stuff. But someone who loves you remembers the texture of your life. The details that don't matter to anyone else, but somehow matter to them because you matter to them. And here's the thing about this sign. It can feel almost creepy if you're not ready for it. You might catch them remembering something and think, how do they know that? But the answer is simple. They were paying attention. They were present. While other people were half listening, checking their phones, waiting for their turn to talk, this person was actually there with you. This connects directly to sign number 7, which is perhaps the most telling of all. They show up, not in the grand gesture way though, sometimes that too, but in the consistent unglamorous way. They text you when you're going through something hard. They ask how that thing went that you mentioned last week. They remember your birthday. They make time for you even when their schedule is packed. People who secretly love you can't help but show up. It's almost involuntary. They might not be ready to say the words or make it official, but their actions betray them. They prioritize you. Your problems become their problems. Your wins feel like their wins. When you're struggling, they struggle too. The reason this is so significant is that showing up costs something. It costs time. It costs emotional energy. It costs vulnerability. You can fake words. You can practice a lie in the mirror and deliver it convincingly. But you can't fake consistent presence over months and years. That's real. That's love in its most honest form. So when you're trying to figure out if someone secretly loves you, don't just listen to what they say. Watch what they do. Do they remember? Do they show up? Are they protective of their place in your life? Do they seem jealous when you mention other people? These aren't coincidences, these are patterns. And patterns reveal truth. The harder question is what you do with this information once you see it. Because knowing someone loves you doesn't automatically mean you love them back. It doesn't automatically mean the timing is right or the situation is healthy. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is acknowledge their feelings and create space for both of you to move forward. So let's talk about what happens when you actually recognize these signs. When you start seeing the pattern, when you realize someone's been quietly loving you from the sidelines, the first thing that shifts is your entire perception of their behavior. That text they send at midnight suddenly makes sense. The way they remember small details about your life clicks into place. You start rewinding conversations, replaying moments, and understanding them completely differently. It's like watching a movie a second time and catching all the foreshadowing you missed. But here's where it gets complicated. Recognition doesn't come with instructions. You can't just acknowledge it and expect everything to resolve neatly, because now you're sitting with information that changes the dynamic between you two, whether you want it to or not. Some people panic at this point. They pull away because they feel guilty, or because the attention suddenly feels like pressure. Others lean into it, flattered by the devotion. And some people freeze, unsure if they're reading it right, or if they're just seeing what they want to see. The reality is that secret love is often secret for a reason. Maybe they're protecting themselves from rejection. Maybe they're protecting you from complications. Maybe they're waiting for the right moment that never comes. Whatever the reason, that silence has been their way of managing something painful. When you finally see it, you have to decide what you're going to do with that knowledge. And that decision matters, not just for them, but for you too. If you care about this person, you might feel an obligation to reciprocate. But obligation isn't love. It's just another kind of weight. If you don't feel the same way, you might feel guilty. You might start second-guessing your own feelings or wondering if you're missing something. You might convince yourself that you should feel something you don't actually feel. That's where clarity becomes essential. You need to separate what you feel from what you think you should feel. You need to be honest about whether there's potential there, or whether this is someone you care about deeply, but not in that way. And if you do feel something back, that's its own journey. Because secret love often comes with unspoken expectations. They've built a version of you in their mind. They've imagined how things could go. The real you, with your flaws and your own complications, might not match that image. That's not a failure, it's just reality. The healthiest thing you can do is create space for honest conversation if you choose to have one. Not to force reciprocation or to validate their feelings just because they've been loyal, but to actually see them and let them see you. To acknowledge what's been there without pretending it's something it's not. Because sometimes secret love needs to become honest love for anything real to grow. And sometimes it just needs to be released, so both people can find what actually works. That's the thing about hidden feelings. They take up so much energy. Energy that could go toward clarity, toward real connection, toward actually building something, instead of just wondering about it. The person who loves you in secret is exhausted. They're managing a double life, monitoring every text, calculating every glance. That's not sustainable, and it's not fair to either of you. So here's what matters now that you've seen these signs. You have information, you have awareness, and awareness is where everything changes. You can choose to stay in the ambiguity if that feels safe. You can choose to gently create space for honesty. You can choose to have a conversation. Or you can choose to let it go and move forward knowing what you know. All of those are valid paths. But staying in limbo, while pretending you don't see what's right in front of you, that's the one thing that doesn't work. Because unspoken feelings don't just disappear. They calcify. They turn into resentment or regret. They poison friendships. They create a version of closeness that's built on a lie. The 7 signs we talked about. The way they remember small things about you, how their body language shifts when you're near, the effort they make to be in your orbit, the jealousy that leaks through, the vulnerability they show only to you, the way they're always there, and how they look at you when they think you're not watching. These aren't accidents. These are choices. Someone made the choice to love you, even if they haven't made the choice to say it. And that matters. It matters that you're worthy of that kind of attention. It matters that someone sees you that clearly. It matters that you're not invisible, or unimportant, or forgettable. But it also matters that you don't owe anyone a response to love they haven't been brave enough to claim. If you feel the same way, that changes everything. A conversation becomes possible. A real relationship becomes possible. Honesty becomes possible. And that's worth the risk and the awkwardness and the vulnerability. If you don't feel the same way, that matters too. And the kindest thing you can do is eventually make that clear. Not with cruelty, not with rejection dressed up as confusion, but with honesty. Because someone who loves you deserves to know where they stand. They deserve the chance to move forward instead of staying frozen in a hope that won't happen. And if you're not sure yet, that's okay. But don't let uncertainty become an excuse to keep someone suspended indefinitely. Give yourself a timeline, give yourself permission to figure it out, and then act on what you know. Secret love is real love, but it's incomplete love. It's love that hasn't been tested by reality, by actual communication, by the messy work of building something together. So whatever you decide, decide consciously. See the person in front of you, let them see you, and then choose what comes next with your eyes open.